Guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Julia, the gringa living in Chile. This is exactly what this channel is all about. I share my experiences as a gringa living in Chile or my experiences with the US. If that's something you'd be interested in, follow along for more and hit that subscribe button to help support my channel. It means the world to me. Okay, let's get into today's video. So I have a lot of people that assume that your finances will be better if you're living in the US making minimum wage than they would be here in Chile. So today we're going to break that down a little bit because yes, the number of the minimum wage in the US is much higher than what it is here in Chile. But there's a lot of details that are left out when you're only looking at numbers. So let's get into it. So as I said earlier, in this video, we are breaking down minimum wage comparison between the United States and Chile. By the end of this video, you should have a pretty good understanding of which one is actually better to be living with. So for the sake of this video, we will only be talking about the federal minimum wage in the United States, which is $7.25 per hour. Now, take note, your minimum wage can change depending on the states you live in. Some states in the US are more expensive to live in. Think like California, New York, things like that. Some of those states do have laws that require a higher minimum wage, but that is because the cost of living in those states is also much higher. But again, for the sake of this video and making it as simple to understand as possible, we will be using federal minimum wage. So as I just mentioned briefly, the federal minimum wage in the United States is $7.25 per hour. So if you were making minimum wage, federal minimum wage, and you were working 40 hours a week for 4 weeks out of the month, you would make roughly $1,160 a month. Which sounds great, right? Now, when you look at Chile, it's almost half that. It's actually less than half that. It's exactly $500 a month for minimum wage here in Chile. So, of course, you're hearing these numbers and you're like, wow, this is obvious. Move to the US, make minimum wage. You're gonna live a beautiful life, right? Maybe not. Maybe not. Let's talk about it. So if you are making minimum wage in the United States, that would make you roughly $15,000 a year, which again, $15,000 is a lot of money. It sounds very nice. But in the US, this actually falls below the federal poverty level. So even in best case scenarios, you're not making enough to even survive in the poorest conditions. Now, let's say we have two people in the same home working minimum wage jobs. In Chile, you would have about $1,000 a month. And in the US, you would have about $2,000 a month. So it's a very big difference. But let's look at the details. On average, let's talk about rent costs. Now again, if you're living in the United States, this will change a lot depending on where you are in the United States. And in Chile too. I mean, we think about Santiago is much more expensive than some smaller towns down in the south, so same concept. But this is a rough estimate. The average cost of rent in the United States is actually $1,900 per month. And the average cost of rent in Chile for a single person is $450 per month. So already comparing the rent prices, we can see that there is a dramatic difference because if you were making $1,000 a month in the US, you're going to need at least two people to help pay for your rent with a minimum wage job. In Chile, you can afford your rent with one job. However, you'll probably still need another job just to be able to get food and things like that. So that brings me to my next point. Let's talk about food. Food is very expensive in the United States, and that's a luxury we have here in Chile. Many people really don't realize. We have ferias and the fruit stands and things like that where we can get nutritious, healthy, natural food for a very good price. You can walk out of a feria with a huge bag for $20 and you can have enough fruit to last you 2 weeks. Like, it's amazing. In the US, you're lucky to find one bundle of bananas for like $6 or $7. You're not going to find those prices in the US, and this is why a lot of people in the US are actually very unhealthy and they eat very processed food all the time. They cannot afford the fresh, healthy, nutritious, natural food. It's just too expensive. Now the big one, if you have kids, let's talk about the cost of childcare. In the US, you will not find childcare for less than $1,000 a month. Let that sink in. $1,000 a month per child. So if you have 3 kids, that's going to be $3,000 a month. Yeah. Now here in Chile, I had the opportunity to go see some jardins for my son recently. They roughly average in my area for about $200 to $300 a month, depending on the jardin and how it works and things like that. But there's even free options here in Chile, and like the government funded ones. So that is also a very nice luxury for many parents. I used to think people were a stay-at-home mom because they were like really rich and doing really well financially, but actually a lot of the moms in the US are actually staying home from work because they can't afford childcare. Like their wages they would make at work would not even pay for the childcare for them to go to work. So they just don't. They just stay home. Now, one thing that actually is more expensive here in Chile is cars and gas. Now, if you live in a place like Santiago, you do have the blessing of not necessarily needing a car, right? Because like everything's very close together, so it's not so necessary, but still, it's a convenience. But the gas prices here in Chile are actually dramatically more expensive than the US. They tend to be about double what you will pay in the US for gas prices. The other thing that goes along with that, cars are very expensive here in Chile. You will not find a good car for very cheap here. It's not going to happen, but in the US you can find a decent car. It'll be a used one, but you can find a decent car for maybe $2,000 to $3,000. Now, for things like clothes or makeup or things like that, I really don't see that much of a price difference because it's very hard to compare. Because if you go to the US, you have a lot of thrift stores and things like that where you can find very cheap clothes that are used or whatever. Or there's also just stores that have cheaper clothes, right? So you can go to like Gucci and get really nice clothes, but you can also go find cheaper clothes. So for me, that's very hard to compare the two. So I'll just stick to it and say that they are about the same. Now let's talk about medical care. Now considering your cost of rent in the US and then also considering the cost of food, let's say you have a medical emergency. Yeah, that'll put you in debt really, really quick. So just to simply walk into the emergency room in the United States, just to get in the door, it costs you $3,000. $3,000. And if you have to ride in an ambulance, that's about another $2,000 to $3,000. Yes, even if it's like a 10-minute drive. Yeah. I'll start adding x-rays, testing, blood testing, anything like that. If you need a cast, if you broke your arm, anything like that is going to add more to your cost. Yes, your ER bill will quickly turn into a $10,000 bill. Now, on top of that medical bill that you're paying, your insurance will cover maybe like 30 to 50% of that bill, right? So you've still got a $5,000 bill at least. And on top of that, you're also paying for the medical insurance aside from what they're covering on your medical bills. So that's about $500 a month if you're a family. Now, let me start by saying Chile is not one of the cheaper parts of Latin America to be living in. So that is something to acknowledge. This is not considered a cheap country. However, in my personal experience, it is cheaper than the US. Now, I think one of the greatest benefits that we have here in Chile is the healthcare system. Because you could be literally homeless with no clothes on your back and you get sick and you still have a clinic that you can walk into and receive treatment. It may not be a fancy treatment, but if it's a life or death situation, you can be seen and it will not hurt your situation any more than it needs to. And again, we have private medical care here. So if you want to, you can still go private and you can get the fancier medical care and things like that. But it is more expensive. But still, the price of that medical care is still a lot a lot cheaper than what you pay in the US. I think the last time we went to the ER with my son, he was just sick with some laryngitis, and the cost came out to be like $200 or $300 for a private ER. So, I mean, yeah, you can choose $200 to $300 private, or even free if you want to go to public, or you can go in the US and pay $3,000. So yeah, the main point being, when you look at the minimum wage numbers compared, yes, the US makes almost double, if not more, what you would make here in Chile on minimum wage. However, the cost of living in the US is like triple or quadruple what it is here in Chile. So, you tell me what you think. Is that minimum wage number worth it in the US? I don't know. To me, as somebody that lived on minimum wage, I will tell you it's very not comfortable. Yeah, you can barely afford basic needs, let alone anything fun to do. So, yeah, it's not ideal. And nobody wants to live on minimum wage, of course. Like, it is not the ideal situation no matter where you are. But let me tell you, it's probably a lot easier to live on it here in Chile than it would be in the US. Now, just a little tip though, if you are a Chilean trying to go to the US to live there and make a life for yourself, let me just say, you know Spanish. Do not take minimum wage. They will pay you more at any job just for being bilingual. If you are bilingual, you can be paid more. Do not accept minimum wage if you are bilingual. Don't do it. Know your worth, especially in the US, because people will try to take advantage of you. If you go there, know your worth. Do not accept minimum wage if you are bilingual. Seriously, please. So, final question, and you tell me down below. Is the minimum wage in Chile really that bad? Is it actually better in the US? I don't know. I think me living here in Chile has really shown me that those raw numbers of only looking at the wages really do not hold as much value as you'd think, because it's not the number of the dollar sign that you're getting. It's the cost of living and the percentage of your income to your cost of living that you need to look at, and you need to look at it carefully. Now, is that to say that you cannot live a comfortable life in the US? No, definitely not. You can, but you will probably want to have a very nice degree to get you into a very nice industry where you can make $20 to $30 an hour at least. And then you will be living a comfortable life. But that $7.50 an hour, you won't even be able to afford to go to McDonald's. Like, yeah, it's rough. But anyway, that's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave your thoughts on all of this down below. I know it's a very controversial subject, so I'm being brave here putting this all out there. But it's just some really realistic points to think about and consider when you're looking at those numbers, and only those numbers, because it's not just the numbers. There's a lot that goes into it. So let me know down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your guys' support so much. This channel is growing little by little, and it's all because of you. So thank you so much. If you made it this far in the video, put something down there like a star in the comment. Let's do a star today. Let's put a star emoji in the comments if you made it this far, and I will be watching for it. So let me see. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel by hitting that button down below. Also hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. And I will see you in the next video. Ciao.